Okay, good evening to class 3. We're going to cover chapters 12 through 17. I don't think it should be a problem this evening to do that. But let me give a little bit of summary of chapters 1 through 11. Again, that is sort of a literary unit. It fits together, so it's like a major introduction to Genesis, and Genesis is a whole introduction to the rest of the Bible. So there should be some recurring patterns that we're going to see, that we've already seen, and we're going to continue to see. And I also, again, remind you to pretend that you only know chapters 1 through 11. You don't know the rest of the story yet, even though I might cheat and sometimes refer to it, because an introduction is just setting the table, okay? The full meal comes later on through Exodus and then all the way through the story of the biblical Israel. So anyway, so summary of the first 11 chapters. We saw the creation, and instead of how in the English translation it always says Lord for the name Yahweh, and then God for the Hebrew word Elohim. I'm going to stop using Lord, because that is such a confusing word, because it's so much connected to the person of Jesus Christ, okay? And so when we think of Lord, all of a sudden my mind goes that way. It's like that, the Lord have mercies and so on in our liturgies, but we're just going to put that aside, and I'm going to use what the Hebrew is the word Yahweh, which is a name referencing a God, okay? This specifically biblical God. And you all know the story of the burning bush when Moses asks him his name, and that's when he tells Moses his name. So apparently this, anyway, but that's later. We're not even going to go into Exodus. But anyway, so that's what I do. So remember again that creation was an act of power and victory over the waters, which were not created, and the darkness, okay? So the act of creation itself, of creating an habitable world, a dry land, so that it could sustain the life that was created after it. So I want you to remember that this statement is an apology and defense of a single God, a creator God, rendering all the other gods of the nations non-functional. And this is important because clearly the writers of the Bible were monotheists, okay? Which was why the big heresy, of course, was to chase after other gods. And if you recall some of the things I had you read extra that I didn't have this week, it referenced that sort of chasing after other gods and attributing the blessings given to you not to your God, Yahweh, but to the other gods. So, competition. So anyway, so just remember that the act of creation is not just, okay, willy-nilly, let's go out and paint something. Let's go out and sort of do something. No, it's an act of victory over the darkness and the waters, okay? All the other gods and all the other nations that come later on, it is the same notion, okay? Same notion. Now, if you need a reminder, think of Holy Saturday and the destruction of Pharaoh's armies in the waters, okay? It's a similar pattern, okay? Where God gets glory when he does something great, okay? That's the way it works. You win a gold medal, you get glory because you accomplished something, thinking of past Olympics. So anyway, so just remember that little thing, okay? So with that, and how he demonstrates his power and authority, then also the idea of blessing, okay? Be fruitful and multiply. We heard that time and again. And it's referenced not just to the human beings to be fruitful and multiply, but to all the animals, both those in the seas, okay, the fish, the mammals and whatnot, and those that are land, okay, that everybody is given this blessing. Now, one of the strange things that was repeated time and again was this idea of descendants, generations, okay? So everybody who's a major figure has his descendants, and so beget so-and-so beget so-and-so. And we have this repeated time and again. But it's what's important behind this idea is the fruitfulness, the divine blessing, that life is continuing. But also, and this is something I want to maybe you wouldn't necessarily read it because it stands in the background. It's slamming the idea of the eternality of the soul, that each person is an individual and the soul inhabits the body. In death, the soul is freed from its fleshly, mortal reality and is freed to go back to eternity. Now, this idea, which is it's a common idea in a lot of religions, Hinduism, for example, certainly Platonism, Greek philosophy and whatnot, but this is slamming that all together. There is no such thing in terms of the Bible now. Forget about, we're only discussing of the idea of a separate individual, disconnected, a reality unto himself. Okay? No. You, I, everyone are the result of the procreative blessing from the biblical point of view of God through the seed. Okay, through the seed, be it animal, vegetable, or whatnot, you see, and we exist because of that. So whether I like it or not, you see, my beloved father who passed away in 2021, I am the son of John and Lois Lowe. Okay, it's just, and it behooves me to remember that, just because when we, because behind this idea of radical individualism is the ongoing problem of human arrogance. Now, we saw the problem of human arrogance already deeply in the story of Adam and Eve. You see, Adam not particularly satisfied with everything, then he wants a mate that's an extension of himself, and then she goes and causes problems, is tempted, I want to be, eat of the tree, tree of knowledge of good and evil, so that, we can be God and we don't need him. See? And the whole idea of the biblical understanding of these first section is that we are completely dependent upon him. And with that dependency comes responsibilities, okay? Responsibilities, specifically the human being has the burden, the onus of managing, of overseeing, of naming the animals, for example, which is to differentiate between them, and then also to be an overseer. And with that, of course, then we see already in the story from the beginning of the human failure, the human disaster, which to me is an arrogant disaster, the temptation to want to be like God. You see this obsession to be a reality unto yourself, okay? Now, then we saw the story of Cain and Abel, immediately attesting, again, the story of they both bring their offerings and God accepts one, rejects the other. We're not told why. Because the story is meant to test Cain, okay? Cain, sin is lurking at the door, looking for someone to devour. So it heightens Cain's immediate response of jealousy, and then the innocent, the premeditated murder of his brother, okay? The cursing, and then with that, both, remember, again, I'm just, recounting, the cursing of both the land again, and then creating the human reality of this world that is not just broken, but now is no longer the garden of blessing, the garden of enjoyment, the garden where everything is provided, and you simply, you, me, us, Adam and Eve, have to do what little God is asking, okay? Anyway, so we see that. So Cain gets cursed, okay? And his response is not to accept his punishment, okay, but then builds a city, and then with that comes the whole sort of civilization of that results from that. And you see that in all the names and blah, blah, blah. But the point of all of that, once again, is that the evil has spread everywhere. Again, the human problem. And so what we're going to trace, and what we've begun to trace, and we're going to see it again now in these next 5 chapters, is how are we going to solve this human problem? Creation has a human problem, okay? And we know this. Just read the headlines and scope out all the latest human disasters or human-centered disasters. Okay, so anyway, so you have the story then of course of Cain, then you have God wanting to destroy his creation and just like wash his hands of it, okay? But he finds one righteous man, okay? And therefore he decides, well, I'm going to take Noah and those that he can salvage from the landed creatures and start again, which is functionally what he does. Noah's in the ark over a year, blah, blah, blah. And he starts again through his three sons, and then then it goes on. And just remember that then, of course, Noah also has a minor slip up. He gets drunk, okay, because he is enjoying the fruit of the vine, you see, and one of his sons gets cursed. So again, you see this pattern of cursing that happens, cursing as judgment. There's a consequence that affects the next generations, okay. And this is something just in general. If you don't realize it, it's a common biblical theme that goes all the way that we inherit the next generation's problems and so on and so forth, and it carries over. You see, no one gets to start again. Okay, Noah got to start again. So anyway, so we then have the story, and then again with the next section that leads up, you have the human beings becoming impossible again, and then the story of the Tower of Babel again, the image of man building something of stone to reach the heavens, as if to have this great glory. And then of course God has to intervene and completely disassemble it again, destroy it. And now that brings us to the end of chapter 11. And I'm just going to now start this evening and just refer back to a strange verse. This is in verse 11, chapter 11, verse 27. Now these are the descendants of Terah. Terah was the father of Abram, Nahor, and Lot. Okay, so what I want you to just focus on is this is the introduction to the next story, okay? Adam and Eve, Cain and Abel, the multiplication of evil, Noah, post-Noah, craziness of human civilization, and now we're starting again a new chapter. And it's under the heading of Terah, the father of Abram. Now, what this means, technically speaking, is what is going to follow immediately is going to be about the story of Terah through his the blessing of procreation, of which Abram, even though the text is going to focus on Abram and we're not going to mention Terah anymore, this is intentional by the writer, okay, that he would focus now, these are the descendants of Terah. Before that, we had the descendants of Adam, the descendants of Cain, the descendants of Noah, blah, 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 so on and so forth. So anyway, so all that being said, let's begin and read chapter 12, okay? Now, remember I said the name Abram means exalted father, okay? Symbolic name. So just keep that in mind as we see the crisis that unfolds. Now, we should assume now that what God is going to do is what is going to be a repetition of what he's done already before, and that is the testing. Abram's introduced to us. We know nothing about him other than where his father was, and he's coming out of the Tigris and Euphrates area, okay, Ur of the Chaldeans, okay. And so now Yahweh, I'm using that instead of the word Lord, said to the exalted father Avram, go from your country and your kindred, your father's house, to the land that I will show you. Now, when you hear the word land, you must connect it to the idea of the habitable land, the land that was given as a gift of God for the humans, okay? Not just land as in the acreage around where I live or where you live. No. This notion of land is a carryover of the dry land that was with Adam and Eve and the garden, and then also the dry land of Noah. So this issue of land has already a loaded sort of development. So go to the land that I will show you. I will make of you a great nation. I will bless you. Make your name great, exalted father, Avram, so that you will be a blessing. Okay? I will bless those who bless you, and the one who curses you, I will curse, and in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed. It's quite an introduction. Okay, But notice here, and this is another point that I cannot stress enough, and it's repeated itself already, that God's interest is in the entirety of his creation. Everyone. In you, all the families of the earth will be blessed, okay? Even though the biblical story is now going to narrow down with Abram and then his offspring, Isaac, Jacob, the Israelites, and then the story going forward of the biblical Israelites, okay, that goes all the way on, that we'll focus. Even though it's narrowed down, you need to remember this introduction. God is interested in the totality, not just a select group of people, the Hebrews, okay? The Hebrew, no. He's interested in the totality, because some people think that as it narrows down that he's only focusing on one. That's not how we're going to read and understand the text, and I'm already sort of pointing it out to you. In you, all the families of the earth shall be blessed. So Abram's done nothing, okay? We don't know if he's a righteous person. Noah was righteous, so on. Cain, not so much. But he is going to be an instrument of blessing, okay, for the entire world. Okay, so, but he's got to leave. He's got to leave everything behind and go to a place that he doesn't know where his destination is yet. So the very fact that requires an act of faith, an act of trust. So this very statement here is already a test, okay? Is it not? It's already a test. So Abraham went as the Lord told him, and Lot with him, which was his nephew. We didn't read the end of chapter 11, but it's there. Abram was 75 years old when he departed from Haran. Think of some place in modern Syria. Abram, exalted father, took his wife Sarai. If I don't expect you to remember, but Sarai means my chieftains, my sons as princes, okay? So, which of course she has no children, so she has none of them. So, but that's the intent of the name. Okay. His brother's son Lot, all the possessions that they had gathered, and the persons whom they had acquired in Haran, and they set forth to the land of Canaan. When they came to the land of Canaan, Avram passed through the land to the place of Shechem. It happens to be in the center of the country, center of Palestine. At that time, the Canaanites were in the land. Then Yahweh appeared to Abram and said, "To your offspring, I will give you this land." Okay, a promise. See, first, I will bless and make your name great. Now I'm going to give you this land. So the focus is on this land as the new point of beginning, okay? This land, or this area, the land of Canaan, okay? So he, Abram, built there an altar to Yahweh who had appeared to him. From then he moved on to the hill country on the east of Beit El and pitched his tent. Okay, so you will soon see from just the description here that Abram is a nomad, okay? He's a nomad, he has a tent. He's a Bedouin, if you will, you see, with flocks and sheep and so on. He's not building a city like Lamech did and Cain did, okay? No, you already know that from the first 11 chapters. Cities are not very popular with this biblical Yahweh, okay? Not very popular, okay? So anyway, so he pitched his tent with Bethel on the west and Ai, another town, east, and there he built an altar to Yahweh and invoked the name of Yahweh. Then Abraham journeyed on by stages towards the Negev. So he started, if you say from parts of Syria, came to the center of the country. Now he's going down south, okay? Negev, which is then leads to Sinai, the Sinai Peninsula, Egypt, and so on and so forth. Okay, so to the southern part of the country, desert. Okay, so now there was a famine in the land, okay, in the land of promise, the land of Canaan. So Abram went down to Egypt to reside there as an alien. Okay, now we're not told that he was supposed to go down. He takes it upon himself, okay, to leave the land but it's already the land of promise that he's leaving. And this is already bad news, okay? Already bad news, okay? The testing, remember I said about testing, okay? So we're in chapter 12 and he's being tested again with the idea of famine. Now this story, we're gonna read it because it's in Genesis, is gonna replicate itself, okay? It's gonna replicate itself with disaster, but that's later. This is just, it's like Diana has made the latest yummy Albanian dish, and she allows Bob to stick his finger in and taste it, okay? But no more, okay, no more, it's not time yet. So anyway, so he goes down there as an alien, for the famine was severe in the land. And when he was about to enter Egypt, he said to his wife, Sarai, my princess, I know well that you are a woman, beautiful in appearance. And when the Egyptians see you, they will say, this is his wife. Then they will kill me, but they will let you live. Say you are my sister, so that it may go well with me because of you, and that my life may be spared on your account. When Abram entered Egypt, the Egyptians thought the woman was very beautiful. When the officials of Pharaoh saw her, they praised her to Pharaoh, and the woman was taken to Pharaoh's house. And for her sake, he dealt well with Abram. And he had sheep, oxen, male donkeys, male and female slaves, male donkeys, and camels and whatnot. Okay, so testing. Abram is failing miserably. Okay, failing miserably. Okay? He's trying to connive his way. He's worried about, he's not trusting the God who has called him and already giving him, made him promises that would make Pharaoh, the image of the most powerful sort of king, if you will, on the ancient Near East, look wimpy, okay? A great nation. You will be a blessing to the entire earth, okay? So this is another example, and it's going to repeat itself. Abram is a problematic personality, okay? And you're going to see it, but you see it here already, okay? He fears for his life. He tries to manipulate and save himself. And the point of the whole, where we are in the first one, is to trust the God who has created you and will provide for you. Okay, in the same way that he provided the land and the vegetation and everything else, he will provide. So when we're reading this, we can see that Abram is not very impressive so far. He's not the man of faith, okay, yet. Okay, in other words, he's, if you will, he's very human. If you will, he's very fallen human. Okay, like all of the flawed characters that we have seen so far. Okay, so, but Yahweh afflicted Pharaoh and his house. Okay, Yahweh as the supreme God. Okay, forget about all of the Egyptian gods and goddesses and whatnot. You see, there is the one Yahweh, and he is the one in control with great plagues. Okay, now as soon as we mention plagues, we cannot help but think of what comes in Exodus and Moses and whatnot. Okay, but this is just, yes, they are linked. Okay, but we're reading here and moving forward. We're not moving backwards. Okay, the house with great plagues because of Sarai, Abram's wife. So Pharaoh called Abram and said, "What is this you have done to me?" Okay. Instead of being a blessing, he's being a curse. Abram is. Why did you not tell me that she was your wife? Why did you say she is my sister? Said, I took her for my wife. Now then, here is your wife. Take her and be gone. Pharaoh gave his men orders concerning him, and they set him on his way with his wife and all that he had. Okay? So the point here is that God, similar to the previous chapter, has to intervene to save Sarai from Abram's stupidity and lack of trust. Okay, has to intervene, and this is what happens. He intervenes to derail what would have been a disaster. Because I will bless you and be blessing. I'll bless those who curse you, and in you, if there is going to be a promise of the land and the descendants and so on, Sarai is going to be a critical part of has a role to play. Okay, so you see here in chapter 12, there's already all kinds of problems happening. Okay, so chapter 13. So Abram went up from Egypt, he and his wife and all that he had, and Lot with him, into the Negev, which he had already been. See, the point is he shouldn't have left in the first place. So, but again, the idea, let me say it again, the idea of all of these stories is to teach us, okay? You think we learn things once and for all? You think all of a sudden that just by watching and so on, that we're not, the human being is sadly repetitive, okay? Mostly in his sinfulness, okay? So we're seeing this. Again, this is what God is working with. So now Abram was very rich in livestock, silver, gold. He journeyed on by stages from the Negev as far, he's reversing course, back to Bethel, where he was, to the place where his tent had been between Bethel and Ai, to the place where he had made an altar at the first. And there Abram called on the name of Yahweh. Now Lot, who went with Abram, also had flocks and herds and tents, so that the land could not support both of them living together, for their possessions were so great that they could not live together. There was strife between the herders of Abram's livestock and the herders of Lot's livestock, and the time the Canaanites and the Perizzites lived in the land. And Abram said to Lot, let there be no strife between you and me, between your herders and my herders. We are kindred, family. Is not the whole land before you? Separate yourself from me. If you take the left hand, then I will go to the right. If you take the right, I'll take the left, so on and so forth. And then Lot decides that he likes the Jordan River Valley and the area around Zoar and Sodom and Gomorrah. Okay, and verse 10 says, before the Lord had destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, because when we hear Sodom and Gomorrah, we're already a chapter ahead about the whole story of its destruction. So anyway, so Abram settled in the land of Canaan, while Lot settled among the cities of the plain and moved his tent as far as Sodom. Now the people of Sodom were wicked, great sinners against the Lord. Now we've heard this already. It's the lead into the story of Noah and the ark, okay? So the wickedness. The Lord said Yahweh said to Abram, after Lot had separated from him, raise your eyes now. Okay. See, maybe he had cataract surgery and he's now farsighted like me and no longer nearsighted. Look from the place where you are, northward, southward, eastward, westward, for all the land that you see, I will give to you and your offspring forever. Okay, so Sarah's safe, offspring, again, the promise of which was initiated at the beginning of chapter 12. Again, I will make your offspring like the dust of the earth, the blessing of procreation. So that if anyone can count the dust of the earth, your offspring also can be counted. Okay, so it is the ultimate promise, if you will. Okay, that his line will continue. It's actually, if you think about it, it's a kingly promise. Someone, the king that the king is dead long of the king. There's got to be a son to carry on, so the dynasty continues. So it's this idea of dynasty without using the word, okay, which is also more magnificent. Rise up, walk through the length and breadth of the land, for I will give it to you. Okay, this land, not just as promised, but as the blessable, sustainable place where God will provide. Okay, will provide. So Abram moved his tent and came and settled by the oaks of Mamre, which are at Hebron, and there he built an altar of the Lord. Okay, so again, promise, the beginning of 12, disaster already in end of 12, separation, Abram gets the center of the land and the promises. So all is good, all is good. So chapter 14. Okay, there's a lot of names here. So I'll go through them quickly. In the days of King blah, 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 King Eric of blah, blah, blah. Anyway, they all got together. I'm moving down to verse 5. In the 14th year, the kings who were with him came and subdued the Rephaim, blah, 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 and so on and so forth. And then they go to verse 8, the king of Sodom, the king of Gomorrah, the king of Admah, blah, blah, blah. There's a big battle of all these kings, okay? Again, kingship, not the biblical God's favorite reality. So the enemy took all the goods of Sodom and Gomorrah. This is the point in verse 11. All the provisions and went away. He also took Lot, the son of Abram's brother, who lived in Sodom, and his goods, and departed. So, okay, Lot's been kidnapped. Then one who had escaped came and told Abram the Hebrew. Now, this is an odd designation, okay? It comes out of nowhere, okay? Now, there's nothing to make of it at this point. I mean, Hebrew becomes a technical term much later. The word Hebrew can mean two things. It can mean the son of a previous person mentioned in the genealogies, Eber, because in Hebrew it's Ibri, okay? Or it can be the one that is passing through, okay, passing over. Okay? Anyway, it's just there. It's just an odd designation. Was living by the oaks of Mamre. When Abram had heard his nephew had been taken captive, he led forth his trained men, born in his house, 318 of them, and went in pursuit as far as Dan. Okay, so again, southern area. Abram's in the center of the country. Okay, if you will, Jerusalem, what was Jerusalem now? Sodom is down here, the south. Abram's in the middle of the country. And Dan is the far north, up by the border of modern Lebanon. So anyway, so he divides his forces against them by night, he and his servants, and routed them and pursued them north of Damascus. Okay, another couple hours by car, if you will. Then he brought back all the goods and also brought back his nephew Lot with his goods and the women and the people. Now, the point of this is how Abram easily defeats these massive kings, okay, this coalition of kings, okay, with 318 people, okay. Anyway, so he goes and fetches his nephew. What is important is what's to come. After his return from the defeat of Kedorlaomer, and all the kings were with him, the king of Sodom, and went out to meet him at the valley of Shaveh, and the king Melchizedek of Salem brought out bread and wine, okay? Traditional offerings of hospitality and greeting. And he was the priest of the God Most High. Now, this is a title we haven't heard yet. We've heard Elohim, which means God, El, but not El Elyon, okay? So we don't know, whatever, the God Most High. He blessed him and said, Melchizedek, his name means King of Righteousness, by the way. That's a very powerful name. Blessed be Abram by God Most High, maker of heaven and earth. There's our connection with everything that's gone before. The one God who made the heaven and the earth. Okay, we had that in Genesis. Okay, God creates the heaven and the earth, verse 1 and 2. Blessed be God Most High, who has delivered your enemies into your hand. Okay, that's the point, okay? That it is God who has done this, again, okay? God who has done this. So Abram needs to trust the same God who provided in the beginning of the story will continue to provide. So it's basically the same activity that we had previously, now repeating itself, but with Abram, okay? So blessed be God, okay, who has done this. So it's not Abraham, it's not his power, his might. That's what God wanted to get rid of in the story of the scattering in the Tower of Babel and whatnot, you see. There's no arrogance here. Everything is due to God. So Abram gave 1/10 of everything, the booty, the goods. Then the king of Sodom said to Abram, give me the persons, but take the goods for yourself. But Abram said to the king of Sodom, I have sworn to Yahweh, God Most High, maker of heaven and earth, a lot in those three titles, that I would not take a thread or a sandal thong or anything that is yours, so that, catch this verse, okay, so that you might say, I have made Abram rich. Okay. No, not a huge. It all belongs to God. Okay. You will not get any glory. Okay. It is not your doing. I will take nothing but what the young men have eaten and the share of the men who went with me. Okay. Let them take their share. Okay. So again, this idea of I know this may sound strange to your ears, of protecting the honor of God. No, the honor that belongs to God and not to anybody else. Very important concept throughout the Bible, because if you steal God's honor, okay, then you're going to be face judgment. You're going to face him. Okay, that's why later on, when if you want to have fun, go read the 11 chapters of the prophet Hosea. It's a very short book, but it's all about the harlotry of attributing to the other gods in the area, Baal, Molech, and whatnot, the things that Yahweh is doing for them. So, in other words, attributing. So that's the idea of unfaithfulness. Okay, no, it's notice who is the source of everything that you have. This is the point. Okay, so let's move on. Chapter 15. After these things, the word of Yahweh came to Abram in a vision. Do not be afraid. Notice the repetition content. Abram, I am your shield. Okay, now just think what just happened. Your protector, that's what a shield is. Your reward shall be very great. Okay, so in other words, don't panic. I got things under control. But this opens the question of testing. Okay? And okay, God's been burned already. Okay, Yahweh's been burned several times. Okay, he doesn't want to be burned. But Abram said, "Oh, Yahweh God, what will you give me? For I continue childless." Now we're seeing what the problem is. I am continued childless, and the heir of my house is Eliezer of Damascus. Okay, you've made all these promises in 12, and you repeated the promises already, and you've shown you're able to protect and sustain and blah, blah, blah. But there's a problem. I have not been fruitful. I have not multiplied. I have no heir. Okay? Think of all, and he's already promised this land to his offsprings forever. Anyway, and Abram said, you have given me no offspring, and so a slave born in my house is to be my heir. But the word of Yahweh came to him. This man shall not be your heir. No one but your very own issue, okay, in other words, shall be your heir. He brought him outside and said, look toward heaven. Count the stars if you're able to count them. Then he said to him, so shall your descendants be. First it was the dust of the earth. Now it's the stars in the sky. Verse 6 is the punchline, and it will always be the punchline for you, for me, for him, everywhere. And he believed Yahweh, the promises. Okay, that's it. It's trust me. All the struggles in our life is trying to be faithful as has to do with believing the promise, even though when it looks like it is not happening. Okay, and mostly you and I have to not give up hope and live with the promise. Trust in the word that at some point it shall be fulfilled, even when it's not being fulfilled in our day and time or in our life, actually, which is the idea of hope. Okay, so he believed the Lord, and the Lord reckoned it to him as righteousness. We've had this word before. We had it with Enoch, the righteous one who was taken, Noah, who was considered righteous, and therefore God used him to start all over again. And notice this is the point. He is starting, God, Yahweh, biblical God here, is starting all over with Noah. Okay, that's the point. He's starting all over. So this is third time. Supposed to be a charm. we shall see, because we got a long story still to go. So, reckon to him as righteousness, this idea of trust in the promise of what God has said. Then he said to him, I am Yahweh who brought you up from Ur of the Chaldeans. Okay, he's reminding him to give you this land to possess. But he said, Oh Yahweh, how am I to know that I shall possess it? He said to him, bring me a heifer 3 years old, and a female goat 3 years old, and a ram 2 years old, a turtle dove, and a young pigeon. He brought them all these and cut them in two, laying each in half over against each other, blah, blah, blah. The birds of prey came down on the carcass. Abram drove them away. Sun was going down, a deep sleep fell upon Abram, and a deep and terrifying darkness descended upon him. Darkness is always bad. Then Yahweh said to Abram, know this for certain. Okay, again, they're having a discussion. He's having a crisis of faith. That your offspring shall be aliens in a land that is not theirs, shall be slaves theirs, and they shall be oppressed for 400 years. But I will bring judgment on the nation that they serve, and afterward they shall come out with great possessions. Okay, so this is already talking about something that's going to happen during the Exodus period, okay, with Moses and whatnot. And it's strange that the text is already referencing that. See, the bad news, okay? And the reason, quite frankly, if they're in slavery, it's because they've misbehaved, okay? God is punishing, not, as I said a couple last week maybe, or the week before. God's point now is, after the Noah sort of covenant, okay, that he's not going to punish unto destruction, but punish unto instruction, so that people will learn, okay? We do it all the time as parents, and if we don't, what ensues is a disaster, okay? It ensues a disaster. So, okay, anyway, as for yourself, you shall go to your ancestors in peace, and you shall be buried at a good old age. And they shall come back here in the 4th generation, for the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet complete. That's a very strange to our ears, but it's the idea that God is also aware of the Amorites and the nations and their own sins, okay? And that has to run its course. When the sun had gone down and it was dark, and a smoking fire pot and a flaming torch, on that day, Yahweh made a covenant with Abraham. This is the second covenant. We had it with Noah. Unilateral. God is making a promise to himself that he's not going to get angry and destroy again. Okay, he's going to just try to figure out a solution to the human problem. Okay, so to your descendants, I give this land from the river of Egypt to the great river of Euphrates, the land of the Canaanites, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so again, the repetition, okay, it said so on that if he didn't get it the first time, the second time, the third time, I haven't counted, this might be the 4th or 5th time. Okay, so that's it. Now, the covenant is just a contract. Okay, that's all a covenant is. It's a legal contract. Okay, even though nothing exchanged hands, other than it's just God making a promise in legal, technical terms. So not just a wishful thinking, So 16, I have 15 minutes. So now Sarai again, my princess, that's her name, Abram's wife, bore him no children. We already had this problem with Abram. He has no offspring. She had an Egyptian slave girl whose name was Hagar. Hagar is a very interesting name because it means the foreigner, okay? The foreigner, the stranger. Sarai said to Abram, you see that the Yahweh has prevented me from bearing children. This is the point. Go unto my slave girl, it may be that I shall obtain children by her. So now we see the testing of Sarai. That she also is very much aware of her barrenness. And so she's going to try to solve the problem herself. We've had that with Abraham already. Going to try to solve the problem when he went down to Egypt in chapter 12. Okay? He's going to solve the problem by lying about who Sarai was. Okay. Abraham listened to the voice of Sarai. Now, okay, just remember Adam and Eve, okay? It's the same story repeating itself. Instead of Adam and Eve, we have Abram and Sarai. It's the same thing, okay? Abraham listened to the voice of Sarai. So after Abram had lived 10 years in the land of Canaan, Sarai, Abram's wife, took Hagar the Egyptian, her slave girl. Now this is, it's highly symbolic, the idea that she's an Egyptian slave girl because of the history that comes later on. So, and gave her to her husband Abram as a wife. He went in to her, to Hagar, and she conceived. And when she saw that she had conceived, she looked with contempt on her mistress. See? Arrogance is not just a male problem. Sarai said to Abram, may the wrong done to me be on you. Again, now she's offended that her slave girl has insulted her and now is lording it over her. Look, I conceived, you can't. God is blessing me, not you. May the wrong done to me be on you. In other words, it's reverse. Adam blames Eve in the story. Now Sarai's blaming Abram, and it was her idea in the first place, okay, that there would be an offspring for Abram. I gave my slave girl to embrace, and when she saw that she had conceived, she looked on me with contempt. May the Yahweh judge between you and me. Who's responsible? Abram said to Sarah, your slave girl is in your power. Do to her as you please. Then Sarah dealt harshly with her, and she went away from her. Okay, so again, both of them, Abram and Sarah, appear very bad here. Abram passive, weak, and whatnot. Excuse me, this is his child. Notice what happens here. It's a fantastic story. The angel of Yahweh found her by a spring of water in the wilderness, the spring on the way to Shur. And he said to Hagar, slave girl of Sarai, where have you come from and where are you going? She said, I'm running away from my mistress Sarai. The angel of the Lord said to her, return to your mistress and submit to her. The angel of Yahweh also said to her, I will catch this. Now, angel of the Lord is the same as Yahweh, okay? I will so greatly multiply your offspring that they cannot be counted for multitude. In other words, it is the same promise that was given to Abraham about the stars in heaven, the dust of the earth, okay? That this is why I said God, this biblical Yahweh is interested in all of his creation, okay? Even though we're focusing on the Abram-Sarai story, but no, they cannot be counted for multitude. The angel of Yahweh said to her, now you have conceived and shall bear a son, and you shall call him Ishmael, okay? Beautiful meaning, okay? It's God hears, okay? That's the name, God hears. For the Lord has given heed, has heard of your affliction. He shall be a wild ass of a man with his hand against everyone and everyone hands against him. He shall live at odds with all of his kin. So she named the Lord who spoke to her, you are El Roi, okay? The God who sees, okay? The God who sees. For she said, have I really seen God and remained alive after seeing him? See? Therefore, the place was called Bir Laharoi, the cistern or the well of the God who sees. And so Hagar bore Abram a son, and Abram named his son, whom Hagar bore Ishmael. Abram was 86 years old, and Hagar bore him Ishmael. Okay, we have 9 minutes, and we are going to finish. Okay, chapter 17 is a pinnacle chapter. Okay, pinnacle chapter. Everything is led up now to here because we see the crisis. The crisis is there. Where is the promised offspring, the child? Okay, they tried their own way. Yes, they have Ishmael. Now, Ishmael is there. You can't undo Ishmael, and God is going to bless him. So, it's not like, he's cursed or whatnot. No. So, when Abram was 99 years old, Yahweh appeared and said to him, I am God Almighty. Walk before me and be blameless. Okay? You've seen this earlier on. Okay? In other words, heed my commandments. Okay? The idea of walk, in Hebrew has to do with obeying. You see, you listen to obey God means to walk. Okay, to listen to his voice and to walk. I will make my covenant between me and you, another one, and will make you exceedingly numerous. Same thing, same script, nothing new. Abram fell on his face. See, supplication. And God said to him, as for me, this is my covenant with you. You shall be the ancestors of a multitude of nations. No longer shall your name be Abram, exalted father who has no heir. Okay, so that's the pun of the name. It's a bit of a joke, irony, if you will. There is irony in the Bible. No longer shall your name be Abram, but you should be called Abraham. For I have made you the ancestor of a multitude of nations. I will make you exceedingly fruitful. I will make nations of you, and kings shall come from you. I will establish my covenant between me and you and your offspring after you throughout their generations for an everlasting covenant, to be God to you and to your offspring after you. And I will give to you and to your offspring after you the land where you are now, an alien, all the land of Canaan, for a perpetual holding, and I will be their God. Okay, so again, the content isn't new. It's just repeated. It's repeated. There's something I was going to say here that I missed. Oh, yes. The name change. The name change. It's the first name change in the Bible. Okay? And that means there's something significant going on. So, what does Abraham mean? It is the key to unlock everything, the change of name. Okay? He goes from exalted father, of father, Ram, lifted up, exalted, okay, to of father, Raham. Raham is a very strange word, and it means weak, sickly lamb. Okay, not the image of power and strength and so on. So it's as if he's completely reversed what's going to happen. Okay? That he's going to be father of the weak, sickly child. Okay? That this is the promised child that holds the key for the future. Because again, father has to beget son, has to beget son, has to beget. In other words, the genealogy has to start and continue. And there can't be a break. Otherwise, it falls apart. And therefore, then the promises are null and void, meaningless, just empty words. So, okay. Verse 9, God said to Abram, as for you, you shall keep my covenant, you and your offspring. Okay, in other words, our legal binding contract. After you, throughout their generations. This is my covenant, which you shall keep between me and you and your offspring after you. It's a very strange covenant. Every male among you shall be circumcised. I will not elaborate on circumcision. We all know it. You shall circumcise the flesh of your foreskins. It shall be a sign of the covenant between me and you. Now here you have to understand that it's a continuation of the covenant with Noah, where the rainbow is a sign, okay, a visible sign that's there. Okay, now, okay, I don't want to be inappropriate, ladies, okay, but if the sign is where it is located, it's pretty hard for the male not to see it. You know, how often do you see a rainbow? See? Twice, 3, 4 times a year if you're lucky. Now, this means bloody day, the guys are seeing the sign several times a day. In other words, it's impossible to forget because it's in your flesh, okay? It's like a tattoo, if you will, okay? But even more sort of metaphorically powerful, okay? Because it is the anatomy of procreation, okay? So every male among you must be circumcised, okay? We cannot forget. You shall circumcise the flesh of your sworn, blah, blah, blah. Throughout your generations, every male among you shall be circumcised when he is 8 days old. Catch this next part. Including the slave born in your house, the one bought with your money from foreigner who is not of your offspring, your seed. Both the slave born in your house, the one bought with your money, must be circumcised, so that my covenant will be in your flesh, an everlasting covenant. Any uncircumcised male who is not circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin shall be cut off from the people. He has broken my covenant. So the idea is the inclusion of everyone in the house. Okay? And the idea that it is done to you on the 8th day. You are not, excuse me, you are not born a Christian. When people say, I'm cradled or I was born, no, it was done unto you by your parents, and if you were baptized as an infant, you had no say in it whatsoever. Okay, it was done unto you, and now you're stuck with it. Okay, This is the point. If it's done to you on the 8th day, it has nothing to do with your DNA. It's relational. Okay, it's relational. And this is the point. Okay, this is the point. So you are not born a son of Abraham. You are made a son of Abraham on the 8th day. Okay, so anyway, so it's very powerful. And this is, and again, and clearly in our teaching on baptism, it understands it based on these texts. So anyway, so God said to Abraham, we're calling him Abraham finally, as for Sarah, your wife, you will not call her Sarai, but Sarah shall be her name. This is only happens here in the Bible, where a woman gets a name change. Okay, we're going to have more name changes with some of the men. Okay, but here, Sarai, think of my princess, in other words, the mother of these many, is now Sarah, princess. Okay, she is going to be the princess. I will bless her. First time this is mentioned. Moreover, I will give you a son by her. Again, when we talk about the power and the majesty and the honor of God, this is something God will do, not just because, okay, couples get together and have a child. Okay, they decide to do a blah blah blah, and the plumbing works. Okay, no, I will give you a son by her. I will bless her. She shall give rise to nations. Now, this is the irony, because her name also is a little bit of a lessening. I mean, he's saying right here that she's going to have all of these. She is finally going to be Sarai, but no, her name is Sarah. Okay, which is also honors but minimizes her. Okay, just as Abraham is the father of the weak sheep, now she is just the princess, because it's not about them. This is the whole. It's not about them. So Abraham fell on his face and laughed. Okay. This is, if this is the key. He laughed, and Hebrew, laughed means yitzhak. Okay. He laughed. In other words, be serious here. It's a joke. Can a child be born to a man who is 100 years old? Can Sarah, who is 90 years old, bear a child? Okay, so truly, in other words, he's minimizing it because he's thinking fleshly. Abram said to God, oh, that Ishmael might live in your sight. And God said, no, but your wife Sarah shall bear you a son, and you shall name him Isaac. And there is the pun. So God is smacking Abraham for laughing, and saying, now your son is going to be called Laughter. Okay? You want a joke? Here it is. The joke's on you. You're going to have to name him this ridiculous name. Okay? It's like, the name Caleb, with the story of Joshua and whatnot, the right hand, means dog. Okay? Even I don't even call my dog. I gave him a name. Okay? A name that I like. Okay? A nice Arabic name, which happens also to have a Hebrew equivalent. But anyway, be that as it may, it has a name. No, okay? You're going to name him Isaac after this event of you not believing and trusting me. I will establish my covenant with him as an everlasting covenant for his offering after him. As for Ishmael, I have heard you. Again, God does not forget it. I will bless him, make him fruitful and exceedingly numerous. Again, the divine blessing of fruitful and multiply. He shall be the father of 12 princes, and I will make him a great nation. But my covenant I will establish with Isaac, whom Sarah shall bear to you at this season next year. And when he had finished talking with him, God went up from Abraham. Okay, so funny chapter. The promise of the offspring is finally coming. But it comes at a time when Abraham and Sarah are at their weakest. Why? Because it will not be a child of their own per se. It will be the miracle of God. Okay? I will give you a son by her. Okay? Technicality. Okay? Abraham took his son Ishmael and all his slaves born in his house, or bought with his money, every male among the men of Abram's house. He circumcised the flesh of their foreskins that very day, as God had said to him. Abram is 99 years old when he was circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin. Ouch. And his son Ishmael was 13 years old when he was circumcised. Ouch. That very day, Abram and his son Ishmael were circumcised. All the men of the house, ouch, ouch, ouch. Slaves born on the house were also bought with the money. Foreigner were circumcised with them. And there we have the end of chapter 17. So it is 8:03. I'm watching football in 12 minutes. So there you see the progression of the story, okay? And we're how it has gone to the general, and now it's very specific, and we're going to focus on the continued story of Abraham and as it goes through the rest of Genesis. So I am stopping. Hold on, where's the recording here? I take it off.